Hello, fourth grade, and welcome to lesson 8-6 on comparing fractions. So we're going to use some of the strategies that we've learned throughout this chapter on how to compare fractions and kind of put all of those strategies together into one place. Let's go ahead and watch our video lesson, and then we will jump into our notes and our guided practice and do some examples together as well.
How can you compare fractions with unlike denominators? Think about this question during the lesson. Isabella's father is building a model dinosaur with small pieces of wood. Compare the lengths of the pieces of wood. Compare 1/4 inch and 5/6 inch. Then compare 4/5 inch and 4/10 inch. What fractions are you comparing in this problem? You are comparing 1/4 to 5/6 and 4/5 to 4/10. You can compare these fractions because they refer to the same whole, an inch. What are some ways to compare fractions? One way is to find equivalent fractions with a common denominator. Another way is to plot both fractions on a number line. Compare 1/4 and 5/6 by renaming each fraction so they both have the same denominator. Multiply the numerator and denominator of a fraction by the same number to get an equivalent fraction. Do this to both fractions to get a common denominator. Then compare the numerators of the fractions. 1/4 equals the quantity 1 times 3 divided by the quantity 4 times 3. So 1/4 equals 3/12. By what number do you need to multiply the numerator and denominator of 5/6 to get an equivalent fraction with a denominator of 12?
Select your answer.
Now stop and think, we figured out how to get from 4 to 12. We did 4 times 3 is 12. So how do we get from 6 to 12? Well, we know 6 times 2 is going to give us 12, and whatever we do to one part of our fraction, we need to do to the other part. So we would have to multiply the entire fraction by 2/2.
Multiply the numerator and denominator of 5/6 by 2 to get a denominator of 12. The quantity 5 times 2 divided by the quantity 6 times 2 equals 10/12. So 5/6 equals 10/12. Compare the numerators of the renamed fractions. 3/12 is less than 10/12, so 1/4 is less than 5/6.
So here, stop and pay attention to what they did. They had these two fractions that have different denominators, right? So they're looking at two shapes that are cut up into different size pieces, even though that whole shape is the same size, right? The whole is the same. We can't compare pieces that are different sizes. So when we're comparing fractions that have unlike or different denominators, we have to find a way to give them a common or same denominator. That way we're comparing pieces that are the same size. So over here, they had the fraction 1/4 and 5/6. So they had to figure out, okay, what's a multiple, or what number can they multiply 4 by and 6 by to get a common denominator? Well, we know we can make 12. So 4 times 3 is 12, and 6 times 2 is 12. So we can use 12 as a common denominator. That's a number that is a multiple of both 4 and 6. So we multiplied according to those numbers, whatever we needed to make 12 for both of them. 4 times 3 gave us 12, 6 times 2 gave us 12, and then we were able to compare. So now, since our shape is now cut into the same size pieces, they're both cut into 12, we can just look at the numerator now, because the bottom is the same. We don't need to worry about the bottom anymore. We know 3 is less than 10. So 3/12 is less than 10/12. So then we can go back and put those original fractions back in and write our comparison sentence. So 1/4, which is the same thing as 3/12, is less than 10/12, which is the same thing as 5/6.
Compare 4/5 and 4/10 on a number line. The tenths are shown below the number line. The fifths are shown above the number line. How does the number line help you understand how the fractions compare? The fraction that is farther to the right on a number line is greater, so 4/5 is greater than 4/10. Why is 4/10 less than 4/5, even though 10 is greater than 5?
All right, now this is a really important question, and this is a place where I've seen students make the mistake in the past. They look at 10 and they say, okay, 10 is bigger than 5. That means 4/10 is bigger than 4/5. That's not true. Remember, think of it like a pizza or think of it like a cake. If you're cutting something into 5 pieces, those pieces are going to be bigger than if you took that same cake or pie or pizza or whatever it is and cut it up into 10 pieces. If you have to share it with 10 pieces, with 10 people, each person is going to get a smaller piece. But if you're only sharing it with 5 people, those 5 people are going to get larger pieces. So remember, the smaller your denominator, the smaller your bottom number, the bigger your pieces are. The bigger your denominator, the more you have to share it, the smaller those pieces are.
When the denominator of a fraction increases, the size of each part is smaller. If the number of parts, the numerator, is the same, the fraction with the lesser denominator is the greater fraction because each part is larger. So 4/10 is less than 4/5, even though 10 is greater than 5. Now you know how to compare fractions with unlike denominators.
Great job!
All right, so let's go ahead and get into our notes and our guided practice together. Now, I know there was a good amount of information in this lesson, but it's all related to stuff that we already learned. So let's go ahead and take a look at our notes. Now, how can we compare fractions with unlike denominators? That just means different. Unlike means not alike. So we have 3 strategies. We can compare using benchmark fractions, which is what we talked about in the last 2 lessons. If I'm comparing 1/4 and 5/6, I can draw them out. If I want to compare them to one whole, 1/4 is much less than 1 whole, it's closer to 0 than to 1. And 5/6 is closer to 1 than it is to 0. If I wanted, I could have compared it to the benchmark fraction half. So if I wanted to compare it to half, I could have done 1/2 here and 1/2 here. 1/4 is less than 1/2. 5/6 is greater than 1/2. And that's one way that I could have made that comparison. Another thing I can do is I can find a common denominator by renaming the fractions. That just means giving them a common denominator, right? Where we find a number that works with both, a number that is a multiple of both fractions, denominators. So if I have 1/3 and 5/6, I have to think, can I make it so that they have a common denominator so that the bottom is the same? Now, I don't necessarily need to change both fractions. If I can get this one to have the same denominator as this one, then I only need to change 1. So 1/3, how do I get from 3 to 6? Well, I multiply by 2. So if I multiply this by 2/2, this becomes 2/6. And now I'm just comparing 2/6 and 5/6. So since the denominator here is the same, I'm only looking at the top. You can completely ignore the bottom when it's the same. We know 2 is less than 5. So that means that 1/3 is less than 5/6. Now, another example. If I have 1/3 and 2/4, and I need to find a common denominator for those. Now, I can't change just one of my fractions. I can't turn 3 into 4. I can't turn 4 into 3. Not by multiplying or dividing any number. So what I can do is I need to find something that is a multiple of both of them. So a multiple of 3 and a multiple of 4 is 12. I can make 12 using them. So basically what I did was I took 1/3 and multiplied it by the denominator here by 4, top and bottom. And I took 2/4 and I multiplied it by the denominator here, top and bottom. So 1/3 times 4/4 gave me 4/12. 2/4 times 3/3 gave me 6/12. So 4/12 is less than 6/12, because remember, once the denominator is the same, you can ignore it. You're just looking at how many pieces you have out of the same total number of pieces. So when you're looking for a common denominator, you're looking for a number that is a multiple of both those denominators, something that is a multiple of both 3 and 4, or up here, something that is a multiple of both 3 and 6. So 6 times 1 and 3 times 2. We can also use a number line to compare fractions. So if I'm going to compare 1/4 and 5/6, I can draw them out my number line. My bottom part is broken up into 6. My top part is broken up into 4ths. And over here, this last one is 4/4 or 1/2. Now my 1/4 is right here, and my 5/6 is right here. And since I can see that between 0 and 1/2, my 1/4 is closer to my 0 and my 5/6 is closer to my 1, 1/4 is less than 5/6. So let's stop and review. Use any of the strategies to help you compare. You can use benchmark fractions. You can find a common denominator. You can use a number line. Now remember, here's another neat trick. If you're not sure what common denominators you have, if you don't know what a multiple, for example, of 7 and 9 is in this example, multiply by each other. So if this denominator is 7, multiply these numbers by 7. With this denominator 9, multiply these guys by 9. So I can do 2/7 times 9/9 to give me 18/63, because 7 times 9 is going to give me 63, or 9 times 7 is going to give me 63. I can do 4/9 times 7/7 over here. So what I did was I took the denominator from one number and I multiplied the top and the bottom by that digit. And I took the denominator from the other number and I multiplied top and the bottom by that digit. So now they both have a denominator of 63. 4 times 7 is 28, 9 times 7 is 63. So now I'm comparing 18/63 to 28/63. So I gave them a common denominator, even if I wasn't sure if there was a smaller common denominator. Maybe there is, maybe there isn't. If you're not sure, multiply the denominators by each other. So if you're not sure what is in common between 7 and 9, you can do 7 times 9 is 63. So if you did this times 7 to get 63, that means you have to do this times 7. If you did this times 9 to get 63, you have to do this times 9. And then you go in and you can compare your fractions. All right, let's go on and take a look at our guided practice here. Now for your guided practice, says 1/8 is not greater than 1/4. So they were asking us, how do you know which one's greater? We know that 1/8 is not greater than 1/4 because the 8 in 1/8 tells us that there are 8 parts of the whole. And in 1/4, the 4 tells us there are only 4 parts of the whole, meaning that they are bigger sized pieces. So if I took the same size shape and I broke it up into 4 pieces, I've shaded in this much. But if I took that same shape and I broke it up and I shaded 8 pieces and I only did one of those 8 pieces, that's actually half as much as this one. So the bigger the denominator, the smaller the pieces, because that means you have to share it with more. The smaller the denominator, the larger the pieces, because you're sharing it with less people. And for numbers 2 to 5, we're finding equivalent fractions. We're comparing fractions, trying to figure out how to create a common denominator so that we can compare our numbers. So 3/4 is equal to 6/8. We know this because 3 times 2 is 6, 4 times 2 is 8. So those are equivalent fractions. For number 3, we were comparing 1/4 and 1/10. Since we have a numerator of 1, that tells us we're only looking at one piece. We're looking at one piece out of 4 total pieces or one piece out of 10 total pieces. We know right away, since these are the same, this tells us the size. These are 4 bigger pieces and these are 10 smaller pieces. So 1/4 is much bigger than 1/10. For number 4, I showed you how I was able to compare 3/5 and 5/10. So I had to find a common denominator. So I knew I could make 5 into 10 by multiplying by 2. So if I multiplied the denominator by 2, I need to multiply the numerator by 2. So 3 times 2 is 6, 5 times 2 is 10. So now I was comparing basically 6/10 to 5/10, and 6/10 is greater. So 6/10 is greater than 5/10, which means 3/5 is also greater than 5/10. For the last one, I had 1/2 and 4/5. So here, in order to give them a common denominator, I multiplied this by 5/5. I multiplied this by 2/2 to give a denominator of 10, because 10 is a multiple of 2 and of 5. So I was looking at 5/10, comparing it to what turned out to be 8/10. And 8/10 is greater than 5/10. So 4/5 was greater than 1/2. So these are just applying all of the strategies that you've already learned to make these different comparisons and to make equivalent fractions, and all of these tools put into one review lesson, basically. Go over it, go through the steps carefully, use your benchmarks, create common denominators, use a number line, do whatever you need to do to be able to compare the fractions correctly. Remember to always show your work, go back and check your answer. And by showing your work, it also helps you figure out if you make a mistake somewhere down the line, where that mistake happened so that you can correct it. As always, do your best work, neat handwriting on everything you submit. And if you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, take care. Have a great day. Bye-bye.